Healthy boundaries. We've heard we need them in order to enjoy rewarding relationships. We have heard that we need them in order to sustain our mental well-being. In part 1, if you missed it, you should go and listen to it. We learned that some of the after effects of a lack of boundaries include anger, resentment, frustration, passive aggression, to name a few. The question that I come to you with today is, where do boundaries begin? I know that through my personal journey in understanding and embracing boundaries, that my lack of boundaries has made me someone that I don't want to be. It's made me, as I aforementioned, someone that gets angry, someone who's carrying around resentment, someone who resorts to passive aggression or gossip or complaining as a way to indirectly enforce boundaries, which is, I don't think, anything that anyone we know, including ourselves, wants to be or emulate. I think an interesting phrase that we all know quite well is the one that says, charity starts at home. That to me correlates so beautifully with this episode on boundaries, because what I'm going to unpack really aligns with the fact that boundaries start at home. And when I say home, I don't just mean your upbringing, your parental historical data that you're going to be tapping into as a reference point. More than that, I mean home, as in your physical home inside of your body. Boundaries start at home. We are still unpacking the book. Just excuse all my notes. I always say that. I need to stop saying that eventually at some point. Today, as we did with last week's episode, was it last week? 2 weeks ago's episode, we are continuing to unpack the book Set Boundaries, Find Peace by Nedra Glover Tawwab. As you can see, I've got all my little references here, and I'm going to continue with what has been an extremely insightful, very introspective journey to just really round it up. I think I laid a lot of information on people in part 1. Part 2, we're delving into what to do with all the information we've been given and kind of tying it up and putting a beautiful little bow on it. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Time for Us. My name is Danny Wallace. I'm the host of this podcast. If it's your first time joining us, welcome, and thank you for coming. Time for Us is a podcast for the personal growth seekers, and together we will learn and laugh our way towards self-acceptance. Please share this podcast. To my loyal listeners, I love you so much. Thank you for always reaching out and giving me words of affirmation and encouragement and sharing with me how the shit that I come here and talk about is relevant to people outside of my own internal realms' lives. I really appreciate the vulnerability that you share with me in reciprocation to the vulnerability I bring to the table. Thank you very much. Please share this podcast. I'm dying to grow our community. I think the things that we're talking about, the way that we're thinking, is worth expanding and getting more people in the mix. I hope that our conversation will leave you with a little bit more to think about and a lot more curiosity about who you are and the way that you are going about this one precious life we are on this planet to relish in. Today's episode is sponsored by Leonista, 100% Karoo agave spirit, made locally with a carave. No, it's not a carave. It's an agave spirit. No, it's not a spirit. It's a plant made locally with the agave plant that is grown in the Karoo. And the owner of Leonista went to Mexico. She learned from master distillers in order to create this brilliant product, which has quite a smoky taste to it because it is made in a similar process to mezcal. Today I have in my hands the honey reposado, and I'm going to have a swig straight out the bottle because I'm just in the mood. I'm in the mood. Back to regular programming. So we left off our last episode with a lot of information, with a lot to digest, with a lot to sit and look at ourselves in the mirror, straight in the eyes, eye to eye with yourself and say, bitch, what is happening here? What is happening? I hope that's what you did. And I actually have a very strong feeling that a lot of you did do that, because I got many messages from people saying, Danielle, that episode was pretty mind-bending. I'm in a state of shock and I'm struggling to reconcile the information that you delivered through your microphone, which is basically the whole reason I was put on this planet as far as I'm concerned. So that brings me great joy. Back to our notes. Let's lay some more information on you guys. As I said, there was so much to cover. We went with a part 2 because maybe I could have sat and given you a 2-hour podcast, but I didn't think that it would be the most conducive for everyone to actually listen to it. So we've broken it up into 2 different parts. The second part, I come to you to discuss. As I mentioned in the intro, where do boundaries start? Boundaries start with our families. I touched on that prior. Our family histories and personalities determine how we implement and accept boundaries. So I'm going to refer to the book to read some excerpts to you. But before I read to you, I would like you to consider, as I'm reading, how any of this might be applicable to you and your family history or your family dynamic. I would also like to double down on the fact that it doesn't necessarily go to say that you need to have had some extremely traumatic family upbringing or extremely traumatic childhood in order to impact the way that you perceive and implement boundaries. But I think it's so imperative for all of us as fledglings of human beings, just trying to make it out the nest, just trying to get that first flight because of where we're trying to go in our lives. I'm going to drastically encourage you to just think about how this is applicable to you. Reading directly from the book, it says, if your family operates on unspoken limits or regularly ignores limits, you will probably grow up lacking the communication skills necessary to be assertive about your needs. For instance, adult children of alcoholics can have a difficult time setting limits. Parents with addiction issues often send the message that a child's boundaries are not more significant than the parent's addiction. So these children grow up struggling to understand and define limits. If your family of origin communicates and respects healthy boundaries, you are more likely comfortable defining them in any scenario. Personality determines our comfort level with respecting and rejecting boundaries. People with anxious tendencies are more prone to overreact when challenged. Emotional regulation is a common issue as these people are unable to react appropriately given the situation. People who exhibit strong signs of being disagreeable, such as always having to be right, arguing over small details, or struggling to accept differences in others, are more likely to push back against boundaries. What leapt off the page the first time I read this, it is highlighted. The first time I read this page, it leapt off the page and basically clutched its hands around my throat and started throttling me. The level of attention it got out of me was the line, parents with addiction issues often send the message that a child's boundaries are not more significant than a parent's addiction. For instance, adult children of alcoholics can have a difficult time setting limits. Okay, so let's just close the book for now. I'm just going to close the book. Let's just take a break. Let's you and me just this is a conversation between you and I, because the book you've given us a lot to think about, book, and thank you so much. Thank you so much. We're not angry with you, but we do just need a moment to, confer between each other as to what the fuck's actually going on right now. I was absolutely riveted to my core, and I've touched on this in the prior episode, so I don't want to be too repetitive in what I'm saying. When I left the last episode, I was kind of trying to leave us on a bit of a cliffhanger. I don't know if it worked. I hope it did. But the cliffhanger was what I was saying to you guys, I have developed some really unhealthy coping mechanisms, some unhealthy behaviors, and they all, I can see now, stem from a severe lack of boundaries. Reading this book, aside from the fact that I was raised in environments in which my boundaries were not even secondary, but way further down on the list in terms of the adult priorities, which is fine. We're not blaming anyone. We're just acknowledging the facts. On top of that, I have experienced a parent who has not had the best control with substances, alcohol, and based on that, it's wild. It's so wild to see how in my own adult life, I personally am struggling with any level of boundary with myself whatsoever. I have never said no to myself, ever. It doesn't really happen. If anything, what I do is say yes to more. I don't say no. So rather than saying, I won't have that piece of chocolate, or I won't have that bottle of wine at the end of the day at work, after work, I won't drink that much. Instead of saying I won't and denying myself something, I will say yes and more. So I'll say, yes, I will have that bottle of wine, because why would I deprive myself? And what I'll also do is go for a run tomorrow morning, no matter what I feel like. If I feel like I'm about to perish on my deathbed because I've drank a bottle of wine and my eyes are glassy, I feel that dry feeling in the back of my throat, I'm not okay. I wake up with a fucking hangover from another dimension. Best you know, it's not no to anything, it's always a yes. So the yes is, we're going for a run, bitch. I don't care what you've done to yourself. That's on you. You made an adult decision. So rather than saying no to things and exerting boundaries, we're saying yes, go for a run on top of that. My lack of boundaries has seen me in some seriously toxic cycles with substance abuse. That is not just alcohol. I have gotten myself into scenarios in which I am abusing substances. And that comes to the point where it passes the point of having had a good night and knowing when to say no, or knowing when it's time to go to bed. It's when I'm chasing the dragon. For those who haven't heard the term, I'm sure most of you have. It's when you just lose control and you are just doing substances for the sake of doing substances, because the substance becomes your entire reality. Okay? Been there, done that, got the t-shirt. The repetition of that behavior has led me to truly have to sit down with myself, because it is actually destructive. The way that I was doing it, the way that I have been partying, has been destructive for my mental well-being, for the trajectory of my life, for my vision and purpose for myself. I could actually cry if I think about it. And wow, this is coming up from a place of such self-compassion. Like, I'm sorry, I'm speaking very openly on this podcast. So it can be very confronting to think that this is something I'm going to put out into the world. But yeah, it's been quite a thing. I have been running away from myself and so unaware of where the limit is, because I have no limits with myself. So how can I have limits with anyone else? And, you know, moving to Komiki, I keep bringing it up, was a massive step towards removing myself from the cycle that I had gotten myself into. And do I still party? Will I still go out? Probably yes. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I'm a saint. I am still going to drink. I am still going to go out. But what I'm trying to drill into is how everything in your life needs boundaries. Every single thing. Whether it's the chocolate you eat after dinner, whether it's the amount of pasta you eat at the Italian restaurant you go to on date night, whether it's the number of glasses of wine that you drink, whether it's what you allow your parents to say to you and how they treat you, everything in your life requires boundaries. And I really have struggled to even conceive of what that means until now. So what I was leaving us with at the end of last episode was, my lack of boundaries has led me onto the slipperiest of most. It's like a 90-degree slope. It's a sheer drop. It's not even a slope. It's a cliff and a sheer drop, and it's slippery. Oh my God, imagine. You can't win. You just can't win. You fucked. So yeah, reading this book has been so profound, because It starts with the whole journey of how are you feeling in your body? How are you managing your relationships? How are you articulating your needs? What are your needs? And it keeps saying, what are your needs? What are your needs? What are your needs? And I'm saying it so many times to you because I hope it makes you uncomfortable as you're listening to it. What are your needs? Have you thought about it? Have you thought about it? Can you be upset with someone else if you don't even know what your own needs are? What are they? What do you need? What do you expect out of a friend? What do you need from a partner? What do you need? Okay, cool. Think about that. Then it's like, sweet. You need someone who can show up for you in this way. How are you meeting your own needs before you put that to the table for someone else to do? Wow. Thinking about that one. Ponder replay. This is not to consistently pass the buck and say, oh, my parents are the reason this. Oh, my family is the reason that. And I will always reiterate this in every episode that I ever produce because I never for 1 second want anyone to play the victim. We are not playing the victim game here, guys. This is not the victim podcast. It is not. I'm sorry. You came to the wrong place if that's what you were hoping for, and that's not what I'm doing. But in order to take control of your life, there's a part of you that has to reconcile what has transpired. And you have to get to understand yourself. You have to learn yourself. You have to nurture yourself. You have to be compassionate for yourself. In order to heal, you cannot be in a cycle of self-loathing, and you have to forgive yourself for whatever you felt, for however you are feeling. And in order to forgive yourself, you need to understand yourself, you need to be compassionate with yourself, and you need to hold yourself tenderly, so tenderly. And a part of that is really getting to grips with what is your story and how did you get here. Because a lot of what we do in life is driven subconsciously. We do have our mental capacity to, supposedly, what's meant to happen. Our mind is meant to be the master and our bodies are meant to be the servant. That is not always the case. There are so many intricacies at play that wire us in certain ways, release certain chemicals that we then become addicted to. There's so many intricacies that define the way that we navigate our lives almost as zombies, and to the degree that we loathe ourselves because we want more from ourselves, but we don't know how to get there. That is why I keep reiterating the importance of how you got to where you are. Because I think the sooner we can reconcile that, the sooner we can resolve it, we can digest it, and we can move forward with clarity and with love. Love for ourselves, for our parents, for any person or influence in our lives that steered us in this direction. So let's get into a little bit more information for you. How do you know if someone or something has crossed a boundary? I think this is such an imperative question because I think we all question it. I've questioned it so many times where I'm like, am I being difficult, or is this fair? Am I fair to think that you're overstepping right now? Let's get into it. Common feelings when we don't set boundaries. When you say yes, but you want to say no, you feel something off in your body. When you allow people to take advantage of you, you feel something in your body that isn't right. When you give to others begrudgingly, you feel it in your body. So if you learn to pay attention to your body, it will tell you when it's time to set boundaries. In the sigh before you answer your phone, the desire to avoid certain people, or the hesitance to say yes. You might also feel a tightness in your belly, an ache in your shoulder, or a pain in your neck or temple. As you become more aware of your personal signs, you'll discover how often you put your own needs aside to please or take care of others. The emotions that people most commonly feel when they don't set boundaries are resentment, anger, and frustration. Here are a few common causes of these emotions in relationships. Feeling unheard. Setting a boundary, but not gaining the result you desired. Committing to things you don't want to do. Feeling used, and avoiding setting boundaries. Elsewhere in this book, she also talks about the influence that our parents have on our boundaries and how it starts at a very young age. For example, the right to having a preference as a child is an example of setting a boundary. And when we say preference, we mean the right to say, oh, I don't like carrots, and not having your parent sit you down and force you to eat a carrot and say you'll not leave the dinner table until you finished your carrots, that's an infringement on your boundary. The right to say, I don't like hugging Uncle Donovan. I don't want to hug him. And your parents saying, you better hug Uncle Donovan when he comes over. He's your uncle. Like, he loves you so much. Go and give Uncle Donovan a kiss. Go give Uncle Donovan a hug. Go sit on Uncle Donovan's lap. All of these things are infringements on our boundaries that start when we're small, and they teach us that our preferences or how we feel on our body is not something that we should be paying attention to, because we have someone who's older than us, who's an adult, saying, what you're feeling right now is not true because I know what's best. And what it does is teach you to override the language of your body, teaches you to mistrust the feelings that you have. And it teaches you to betray yourself, actually, because when we're young, we don't really have a say. So it makes sense. Our parents probably didn't realize the impact of such decisions or such direction when we were younger. I think we're quite fortunate to be in a generation which has a lot more of an intention around tapping into this kind of knowledge. But when we were younger and those small things happened, those were all small indicators towards how we should navigate our lives. On that note, here are 6 types of boundaries and examples of each. So listen up and see if these ring any bells or make you think of any scenarios in your own life. Physical boundaries is the first one. Example of physical boundary violations: physical abuse, forcing hugs, kisses, or handshakes, standing too close, holding someone's hand in public when they've made it clear they're uncomfortable with public displays of affection, touching someone on their body in a way they deem inappropriate, reading someone's journal, or another form of invasion of privacy. Sexual boundaries. Examples of sexual boundary violations: sexual abuse, assault, or molestation, comments about someone's sexual appearance, touching in a sexually suggestive manner, sexual innuendos, sexual jokes. Intellectual boundaries is the third one. Example of intellectual boundary violations: calling someone names for their beliefs or opinions, yelling during disagreements, ridiculing someone for their views and thoughts, dismissing someone because of disagreements, demeaning a child's mother or father in front of a child, telling children problems they aren't emotionally capable of handling. Number 4, emotional boundaries. Examples of emotional boundary violations: sharing too much too soon, in brackets oversharing, sharing inappropriate emotional information with children, emotional dumping / excessive venting, pushing someone to share information they aren't comfortable sharing, invalidating someone's feelings, telling people how to feel, such as, you shouldn't be sad about that, minimizing the impact of something such as, that wasn't a big deal, pushing people to move past complicated feelings swiftly, and gossiping about the personal details of another person's life. Number 5, material boundaries. Examples of material boundary violations: using things longer than the agreed on time frame. I'm guilty of that. I'm sorry for anyone listening. I'm sorry. Never returning a borrowed item, loaning borrowed items to others without permission, damaging a possession and refusing to pay for it, returning possessions in poor condition. Time boundaries is the last one. Examples of how we violate time boundaries and how they are violated by others: calling multiple times in a row for non-emergencies, expecting someone to drop everything in order to provide help, calling or sending text messages late when the recipient is sleeping, asking others to do things for free, overcommitting, having long conversations with emotionally draining people, requesting favors at a time when it's clear the other person isn't available, asking someone to stay late at work for no additional pay, accepting favor requests from people who won't reciprocate. I've laid some serious information on you guys, and I think while you ponder what I've laid on you and you sit and think about how it's relevant, who it applies to, what situations it applies to, if there's anyone that's come to mind or anyone you think should hear this podcast, now is the perfect time to share it with them. Please will you do so? And it's also the perfect time for a break to hear from our second sponsor. Please do not go anywhere. We'll be back soon. The second sponsor for this podcast is Dr. Huskisson from the Wineland Skincare and Laser Clinic. The man after my own heart, a brilliant esthetician. He does my Botox, as you can see. Oh, I love it. I love trying to frown, and I can't frown. It's the best thing ever. Botox, baby lip filler. He's been doing my face 4 years. Absolutely love him. Been going to him from my modeling days way back when. If you subscribe to my newsletter, you will get a 15% discount on your first appointment. And I'm going to say T's and C's apply because there are T's and C's. Basically, that 15% applies to Juvederm, filler, and Botox. So book with him, get 15% off. The man is an architect and an artist in his own right. The link to my newsletter subscription will be in the description of this podcast. Please sign up if you're interested. If not, no worries. When I first read those chapters, or those 6 boundaries that I read to you now, I was quite blown away at the specificity that she gets into in terms of what is a boundary violation. I love that she gives us real world specific examples for us to validate our own feelings and validate our experiences. I think it is so empowering, and I'm so grateful to having read this book, because it really brought me into a sense of deep self-awareness of what has happened. And I'm like, oh shit, okay, so when I felt that way as a kid, when I felt that way in those situations, turns out that was quite reasonable of me to feel like that. So that brings me on to the second half of this episode, which is around self-boundaries, because we cannot expect others to honor our boundaries if we do not honor boundaries within ourselves, towards ourselves. She says in her book that self-boundaries make us consider the impact we have on ourselves. In the book, she gets into the story about this guy. Okay, this one was like, honestly, a bloody well poke in the eye with an iron rod. It hurts because I felt like she was talking about me. She talks about this guy who has been struggling with money. Eventually, what ended up happening, because she is a psychologist, his dad, this guy who went to go see her, his dad said to him, you need to go see someone because your relationship with money is so fucked that I can't keep bailing you out. He went to go chat to the doctor, Nedra Glavatawab, and he came in there. Basically, he had gotten himself into such a state of disarray financially because every month he would overspend and he would treat himself. So even if he got more money in the bank, no matter how much money he got, he would spend it. If he got a raise, he would buy a new watch. If he got more money, he would buy a new car. He kept overextending himself financially to the point that he was in a state of perpetual financial ruin and could not get out of it. That example being used as a point of reference to boundary setting, I was like, what? Are you trying to tell me that budgeting is a form of boundaries? I was like, don't you even fucking don't try and give me that attitude. She says in the story that the thought of depriving himself made him cringe. Guilty as charged. Honestly, lock me up, take me away. I will be imprisoned for it. If that is the crime, I have committed it. Take me away right now. I can tell you right now that I do not deprive myself of anything. As I said earlier in the beginning of this podcast, it's never no, it's just more yes. So when I read this story, I was personally confronted and quite taken aback by the relevancy to the way that I'm currently operating in my own life. So in relation to this whole story I've just told you, she says something that I thought was quite profound, and I've written it down, so I'm going to read it to you. It's a boundary issue because we lack the willingness to tell ourselves no to whatever we want. I'm only here to speak for myself and to say, yeah, hi, present. Someone's got the register in the lack of being able to say no to themselves, master's class, checking it, saying, Danielle Wallace. And I'm like, present. I'm not saying you're present. I'm saying I'm present. Not happy about being in the class, but I've been there. I'm gonna lay some more knowledge on you. Are you ready? I don't know if you're ready. I don't know if you are ready, my babe. I don't know if you're ready, but you know what? I'm here with you. So that's a kiss through the microphone. You ready? It's dangerous to say yes to every urge without limits. This doesn't happen because we want to damage ourselves, but because we lack healthy self-boundaries. The ability to say no to yourself is a gift. If you can resist your urges, change your habits, and say yes to only what you deem truly meaningful, you'll be practicing healthy self-boundaries. It's your responsibility to care for yourself without excuses. Here's a list of some areas where self-boundaries are helpful. Your finances, your time management, your self-care, which I'm going to get deeper into in a moment. The treatment you allow from others. Your thoughts. Yes, you can stop talking to yourself in an unkind way, just like you might stop someone else from being mean to you. Your reactions. The people you allow in your life. I'm so grateful to this book, and I really hope that something is landing with you guys, because to take the word boundaries, which we started off the series discussing the absolute level of uppityness and up your own arseness that this one word can contain, and we almost start pulling it apart, word like letter for letter, B-O-U, and we spread it out across the table and we look at it and we see all that it encompasses, to get to a point now where we're discussing not like, oh, you crossed my boundary, oh, rude. No, we're beyond that point. We're now saying, okay, how I manage my time is a boundary. How I manage my finances is a boundary. Who I allow in my life, okay, we knew that one already, I guess, is a boundary. How I talk to myself, the thoughts that cross my mind, is a boundary. Oh my word. How much accountability can you pick up in one book? And the beauty of something like accountability is it is empowerment. Yes, it's not always fun for someone to say, oh, you're accountable. This is happening because of your choices. You think about where you need to stop or continue or change. Accountability is a heavy, it's like a beautiful ancient Grecian statue, you know? It's exquisite to look at, but my God, is it heavy. Try and move that shit around. It is hard to take on. But when you really come to terms with it, you want it around. Like, I want that pillar in my life. I want that heavy, exquisite, weighty level of responsibility. I don't want anyone to chip anything off of it. But also, yeah, if I move house, I'm in trouble. What the fuck? How am I going to move this thing? It's a significant presence in your life, but adds so much beauty, and I wouldn't change it for the world. So yes, guys, let's just embrace like accountability. Like, what a gift. Thank you. Turns out boundaries are not actually just about going, it's you, boundary. Yeah. You know, the good old fashioned saying when we were like in primary school, be like, oh, you're pointing the finger, there's three pointing back at you. Classic. Let's be honest, 11-year-olds had some wisdom to them at that point. If we look at it, there's always three pointing back at you. And when it comes to boundaries, there are always three fingers pointing back at you. So I said to you that I was going to drill deeper into the concept of self-care. And I'm going to. Self-care is how you nurture and restore your mind, body, and spirit. The key word here is self. So making time to care for yourself is entirely up to you. Damn. Don't confuse self-care, however, with treating yourself to lavish gifts and pampering yourself. In some instances, you may choose for that to be a part of your regime, but real acts of self-care have little to do with spending money. Instead, they're about showing up for yourself by setting boundaries. Boundaries to consider, and there's a list. There's a motherfucking list right now. So buckle up. I say no to things I don't like. I say no to things that don't contribute to my growth. This is, just to reiterate, self-care, by the way. These are examples of self-care. Okay, I'm starting from the beginning. Examples of self-care boundaries. I say no to things I don't like. I say no to things that don't contribute to my growth. I say no to things that rob me of valuable time. I spend time around healthy people. I reduce my interactions with people who drain my energy. I protect my energy against people who threaten my sanity. I practice positive self-talk. I allow myself to feel and not judge my feelings. Self-care, just saying again. I forgive myself when I make a mistake. I actively cultivate the best version of myself. I turn off my phone when appropriate. Self-care. I sleep when I'm tired. Self-care. Do you know how much that one hit me? I was like, why don't I sleep when I'm tired? Why do I insist on working harder? Why do I insist on staying up? Why do I insist on going for drinks with a friend when I'm fucking exhausted? Why do I do that? Self-care, babe. Go to sleep. Treat yourself like a little baby. Go to sleep. I mind my business. Self-care. I make tough decisions because they're healthy for me. I create space for activities that bring me joy. All together now. Self-care. I say yes to activities that interest me despite my anxiety about trying them. 1, 2, 3. Self-care. I experience things alone instead of waiting for the right people to join me. Self-care. I know you said it then the last time. Whoa, 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 whoa. What are we going to do, guys? What am I going to do with you? What are you going to do with me? What are we going to do with ourselves? What a juicy, delicious, hearty meal. A fucking lamb ragu. A parpadelle pasta with some heavy, delicious glass of Merlot on the side. Like, what a meal to chew on. And what a gift. Yes. Yes, 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 yes. All of these things are self-care. Did you even think about that? Probably not. I never thought about it until now. That is self-care. That is self-care. And it's so worth us redefining what that means. And it's not about making it easier for ourselves. I think that's where I've always gotten lost on the road of self-care. It's not about making it easier. It's about taking care, oh my God, of yourself. Wait a second. Did I just have a fucking brainwave? Let's take the sentence. It's about taking care of yourself. Self-care. Wow. Who would have thought it? Who would have fucking thought it? Yeah, this book has completely stretched, expanded, spread it out into thin tendrils, the concept of whatever I could have imagined a boundary to be. Ever. And ultimately, it's about saying yes to the person you want to become. Setting boundaries with yourself, self-boundaries, is about saying yes to the person that you want to become. You know what? I wrote all of this a few weeks ago. I planned this episode and I was planning just the first episode, and then I got to the point of this where I thought there's no ways I can put all of this information into one episode. So let me make it 2 episodes. And I'm sitting here and I'm recording a few weeks later and I'm reading my own writing and I'm just like, it doesn't get old. It doesn't get old. I'm like, I even thought that I had grown so much. And what a gift. I'm so grateful to that as well. I'm grateful to myself for being able to double down, go back to the drawing board. It's like almost like I did my studying and now I'm writing a second exam. I'm writing the second exam and all the stuff that I'm sitting here and preaching to you. And it's still completely enlightening. I'm feeling so just like steeped in knowledge and a different level of awareness and reminders of what I thought that I should know, what I thought I'd learned, just from recording part 2 for you guys. And thank you. I'm doing it for both of us. But also, that just tells me that what I'm telling you is worthwhile hearing, because I have been harping on this subject matter for an extended period of time. And the fact that even now I'm feeling profoundly impacted by what I'm bringing to you it's chef's kiss. It's just chef's kiss. So to summarize all this wonderful information, I think that it's great. I said it earlier, accountability, what a gift. Let's start with ourselves. What boundaries are we not setting with ourselves? No one ever wants to be a hypocrite. No one likes a hypocrite. No one wants to be a hypocrite. You can't stand on the pulpit and preach boundaries when you are not embodying them yourself. So start with yourself. What boundaries are you crossing? Time management. I listed them, guys. I listed them. I'm not going to rehash them. This is for you to walk away and go into an existential crisis about. We're both going to do it, but now it's your turn. You need to sit and think about this shit because it's fucking serious business right now. Life is joy. Life is lightness. Life is freedom. Life is meant to be. Life is pleasure, but it's also our one precious life. And we want to take it seriously. Not too seriously, but seriously enough to evolve and to make it the most succulent, beautiful, enriching, and delicious experience it can possibly be. I thoroughly enjoyed this exercise. One of them being being granted the permission to have boundaries and expectations of relationships. Because I used to have an XXX, who actually just one X away, but used to always say that you should never have expectations because expectations are disappointments. I'm sorry, my friend. For someone who was 12 years older than me, you fucked that one up because actually expectations are fair and reasonable. They are reasonable as long as you communicate them. Then it's up to you as my partner or the person I'm engaging with to decide whether you can deliver on an expectation. And if you can't, that's fine. Either we negotiate and we meet each other halfway, or we can't do it. Do you know what I mean? I'm not going to not have expectations of people because there's an exercise that needs to be had. And either it's one of, oh, my expectations are too high, but I value you enough that I'm willing to negotiate them. Or my expectations are not that high. And not a personal attack, but like maybe it's not something that you can actually give me. And that's okay. But let's just free both. Let's free ourselves. Let's free our energy. Let's shift the focus. If you can't give me what I need, then that's okay, you know? But there's a level of responsibility that we all have to understanding what that is. You have to sit with yourself and say, what do I need? What do I need? Why am I angry with that person? Why is that relationship causing me frustration and resentment? What is it? Because it's easy to be angry and it's easy to be resentful. It's easy. Those are familiar feelings. But to sit down with yourself and say, okay, I'm angry. But you can't say, oh, because they're like this. What if you want to have a healthy relationship? What is it that you need from them that they're not giving? Okay. And have expectations. You are entitled to them and you should all have them. And anyone who says you don't have to have expectations is an unhealthy person. Okay. And yes, it is coming from a place of personal anger. It's like, Danny, don't get personally involved. I'm personally involved when I say that. It's an unhealthy statement to make. We're entitled to expectations as long as this sentence comes hand in hand. It's one sentence. You're entitled to expectations as long as you communicate them. Done. Finish. Capish. Again, I'm honestly going to say this for anyone listening. Like, yes, I am making it personal because I'm thinking about Erin. I love you. No one can read your fucking mind ever. Amen. Full stop. It's never going to happen. I don't care how well you think we know each other. I don't care how well you think we're supposed to understand each other, how deep our relationship goes, how intimately I'm meant to understand how the one eyelash that flew off your eyelid into the wind meant that you were upset with me because I know eyelashes and wind mean that your granny who passed away. Yeah, cool. I know that that's what you think, but that's not how it works. I can spend every single day. I've spent so much time with Aaron. I spend all this time with him and still tell me how you feel. Tell me what your needs are. Tell me what's on your mind, because it is unfair to expect someone to know what that is without you saying it, no matter how obvious you think it is. No matter how obvious you think it is and how silly and how frustrated you are that they don't get it, say it. Say it out loud, because you're setting yourself up for a world of torture and pain by expecting people to read your mind. No one's a mind reader. And yeah, like not communicating what your needs are. So there's two responsibilities: communication and figure out what it is that you need. That's on you. You have to take it that far. So yeah, fundamentally, we are all responsible for our own healing. And that is the greatest gift we can give this planet, honestly. The greatest gift you can give anyone in your life, yourself, this planet, humanity, society, the universe, is taking your own healing seriously, healing yourself, heal yourself. I feel like that is, when it's funny because like, I think we've all been given this delusion that we need to know, what is my purpose? What is my purpose? Why am I here? What is my If you don't know why you're here on this planet, if you haven't figured it out, if you're like, I don't know why I'm here, I don't know what my calling is, there's okay, I'm going to get a little bit nerdy with you guys, but there's a poem called Ozymandias. I'm going to read it to you, actually. I'm going to find it online. I'm going to read it to you right now. But the poem of Ozymandias talks about humans, our human ego, and how we have this longing to leave something behind. We want to leave a monumental legacy behind, but we are just specks of dust in the sands of time. Our existence is so brief. It is so fleeting. Yet we have this intense need to make such significance of it. The greatest significance you can make is to heal yourself. I mean that dead seriously. That is all of our purpose. Do that, and the path will become clear to you. That's a promise. Heal yourself. Whatever needs to be will be. Okay. I can't believe I'm reading your Ozymandias. That's so funny. Okay. There's a poem. It's called, as I said, Ozymandias by Bysshe Shelley. I met a traveler from an antique land who said, 2 vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them, on the sand, half sunk a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that its sculptor well those passions read which yet survive. Stamped on these lifeless things, the hand that mocked them, and the heart that fed. And on the pedestal these words appear. My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty and despair. Of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away. Wow. So that whole poem is about what I've just described. It's about someone, Ozymandias, King of Kings, pursuing this, getting people to build this massive structure in his honor, to withstand the test of time, to live beyond, to leave a legacy, to live beyond his lifetime. And as it starts, I met a traveler from an antique land. This man was traveling through, and there was the cracked visage from a statue laying in the sand, parts of his body, 2 trunkless legs. This whole monument just shattered because the passage of time trumps us all. We don't all need to be here for some great, significant existence. Our existence is significant in itself. I'm sorry, I'm getting quite philosophical, so I'm going to rein it in. That's about that. We got sidetracked. But yes, thank you for joining me for part 2 of the Boundaries series. I hope you enjoyed it, guys. If you did, please will you leave my podcast a rating. Follow me on Spotify. Follow me on Instagram. Share this podcast far and wide. Yeah, I really appreciate your attention. I appreciate you being here. And I really hope that together we can just evolve. Like evolution, let's just evolve. Let's just be better people. All my love. Thank you for joining me.